Release the dogs on those kids. They need to learn their place in this neighborhood. Those were the words our HOA president Karen Anderson spoke before unleashing military-grade attack dogs on my children for playing basketball in our own driveway. What she didn't know, she'd just targeted the family of the most decorated Delta Force commander in U.S. military history. I was returning from a classified mission when I saw the security footage. My 10-year-old son Marcus bleeding, shielding his little sister as those trained attack dogs tore into his arm. 27 stitches. All because Karen Anderson decided black children shouldn't play basketball where respectable neighbors might see them. The moment I stepped into our once peaceful neighborhood, my combat instincts screamed danger. Private security patrols, identical beige houses, surveillance cameras tracking every movement. Our home was marked with bright orange violation notices and comply or leave spray-painted across our garage. My daughter Amaya ran to me, arms bandaged. "Daddy." The mean lady said we don't belong here, then she let the dogs bite us. Karen had no idea she'd just declared war on someone who dismantled terrorist networks and toppled dictators. Someone trained to dismantle regimes just like the one she'd created in our neighborhood. And I was about to show her exactly what happens when you threaten a Delta Force commander's family. The footage showed my son screaming as the dogs tore at his arm while security guards stood watching. Karen filmed the entire attack, smirking as she said, "Perhaps next time you'll read the HOA guidelines about approved recreational activities." When our elderly neighbor, Mr. Washington, tried to intervene, guards pepper-sprayed the 70-year-old Vietnam veteran. "We called the police," Tara continued, voice breaking. "But Karen's brother is the police chief. He said it was a civil HOA matter and refused to file a report. Marcus needed 27 stitches. The doctor said if the dog had bitten 1 inch deeper, she couldn't finish. The hospital even threatened to call child services, claiming our negligence led to the attack. I examined the HOA violation notices covering our kitchen table. The fines totaled over $27,000. Unauthorized recreational equipment, non-conforming exterior paint, unapproved cultural decorations, and most infuriating, failure to acquire permission for medical appointments. They had fined us for taking our son to the hospital after their dogs attacked him. "What happened while I was gone?" I asked, reviewing the documents as Tara showed me more footage. In just 3 months, Karen had transformed our peaceful, diverse neighborhood into her personal fiefdom. She'd installed herself as HOA president in a closed meeting while most homeowners were at work. The board consisted entirely of her family members. They'd implemented over 200 new regulations, specifically targeting minority families and military households. The Lopez family was fined $5,000 when their daughter had an asthma attack and they rushed her to the hospital at 2 a.m., Tara explained. Karen calls it non-approved hours for vehicular operation. I accessed my secure military database, confirming my suspicions about the security team. These weren't just guards, these were mercenaries. Karen's brother ran a notorious private military company banned from government contracts after human rights violations in 3 countries. Now they were terrorizing American families in a suburban neighborhood. While I examined the documents, a rock crashed through our window with a note. "Final warning. Comply or vacate. 24 hours. Outside, 3 security vehicles surrounded our home, guards with attack dogs patrolling our property line. That night, I slipped past their surveillance using techniques that had kept me alive behind enemy lines. I met with the Washingtons, who showed me footage they'd secretly recorded. Guards dragging the Rodriguez family from their home at 3 a.m., their 6-year-old son still in pajamas for missing a $350 payment. Mrs. Chen from across the street revealed Karen had installed listening devices in the mandatory smart thermostats. She played a recording of Karen instructing guards to make examples of specific families. Break something they value. Karen's voice instructed. Make it look like an accident. I infiltrated Karen's office at 2 a.m., discovering financial records showing she'd embezzled over $2.7 million from HOA funds and was orchestrating a massive property fraud scheme. She'd acquired 14 homes through forced sales after making it impossible for families to pay her invented fines. Most disturbing was a map of the neighborhood with certain homes marked in red, all belonging to minority families. Next to it, a development plan showing luxury condos replacing those properties. Our home was circled with tomorrow's date. When I returned home, I found a black SUV parked across the street. Inside was Karen's brother watching our house. Our eyes met, briefly. The cold calculation in his gaze was familiar. I'd seen it in warlords and terrorists. He didn't know he was looking at someone who had dismantled operations far more sophisticated than his. I made 3 calls that night, first to my Delta Force team members, all currently on leave. The second to my contact at the Department of Defense who owed me for that classified operation in Damascus. The third to a federal judge who I'd once extracted from a warlord's compound. "Daddy, I'm scared," Amaya whispered, clutching her stuffed elephant, the only cultural item they hadn't confiscated. "They're going to take our home, aren't they?" I knelt down, looking into my children's eyes. "No one is taking our home," I said with absolute certainty. "And no one will ever hurt you again." The next morning, Karen herself arrived with 6 armed guards and attack dogs. She wore the same white pantsuit, a clipboard in hand. "Your time is up," she announced with a cold smile. "You have 1 hour to vacate before we remove you by force. I've already sold this property to a more suitable family." I stepped outside, alone, closing the door behind me. "You've made a serious miscalculation, Karen," I said calmly. She laughed. "And what would that be, Mr. Anderson? That I underestimated how pathetic your threats would be?" "No," I replied. "That you never bothered to research who you were declaring war against." Karen's smile faltered for the first time. "Is that supposed to scare me? Do you know how many military heroes I've forced out of this neighborhood?" She stepped closer, voice dropping. "Your kind all think your service means something. Here. It doesn't. I own this community now." She signaled to her guards, who unclipped the dogs' leashes. Perhaps another lesson is needed, this time for the father who wasn't here to protect his children the first time. I didn't move as the dogs approached, growling. 15 years of combat training had taught me perfect stillness in the face of threat. The lead dog hesitated, sensing something the humans couldn't. "You have attack dogs, Karen," I said quietly. "I trained them." "That one," I nodded at the hesitating Malinois, "recognizes what I am." For the briefest moment, uncertainty flashed across Karen's face, quickly replaced by rage. "Take him down," she ordered the guards. "Make his family watch." The guards advanced, tasers drawn. I remained perfectly calm. "Last chance to walk away, Karen. The HOA emergency meeting is tonight. I suggest you prepare your defense." She laughed. "Emergency meeting? I control the board. I control security. I control the police. You won't even make it to tonight." She checked her watch. "In fact, right now, my team is executing a health and welfare check on your family. Shame they'll find evidence of child neglect requiring immediate removal of your children to state custody." My blood ran cold. I'd anticipated many moves, but not this one. Karen had outflanked me, sending forces against my family while confronting me directly. "You see," Karen smiled, seeing my reaction, "I always win. By midnight, your house will be mine, and your children will be in the system. Good luck ever seeing them again with your record of abandonment during deployments." I had seconds to decide. Neutralize Karen and her team here, but risk my family, or retreat to protect them and potentially lose everything we'd built. Karen's phone buzzed. Her smile widened as she read the message. "Too late, Commander. My men are already inside. You're home." For the first time, I smiled. Karen's confidence wavered at my unexpected reaction. "Thank you for confirming what I needed to know," I said calmly, touching my watch. "Signal received." Her phone buzzed again. The color drained from her face as she looked at the screen. It showed her men being efficiently subdued by my team, who had been in position since dawn. Not just any team, the most elite special operators in the world, men who had taken down terrorist cells and rescued hostages in impossible situations. "What is this?" Karen demanded, her voice rising in panic. "That, Karen, is my family's security detail. Did you really think I'd leave them unprotected after what you did to my children?" I stepped closer. "You should have researched who you were dealing with." The HOA emergency meeting that evening was packed with frightened homeowners. Karen sat on her elevated platform, visibly shaken but determined to maintain control. Guards with attack dogs lined the walls, and her brother stood beside her, hand on his holstered weapon. "Before we begin reviewing violations," Karen announced, voice slightly unsteady, "I want to address the Anderson property situation." She pulled up images of our home on the projector. "This property has accumulated fines exceeding $30,000 and continues to violate our aesthetic standards. As per the emergency powers granted to the board in Bylaw 47B, we will be voting to seize the property and auction it." Her brother stepped forward. "My security team will remove the occupants tonight, regardless of their compliance. We need to set an example." I stood up then, walking calmly to the center of the room. Homeowners shrank back, afraid of association. "I have a question about your authority to release attack dogs on children playing in their own driveway." My voice carried across the suddenly silent room. Karen's eyes narrowed. "You must be the absent father who abandons his family while disregarding our community standards," she sneered. "Perhaps if you were present to teach your children proper behavior, they wouldn't have required corrective measures." Her brother stepped closer, hand resting on his holstered taser. "Sir, you need to take your seat or be removed." I maintained the calm I'd perfected in the most dangerous operations of my career. "I'm curious, Karen. Did you research who you were targeting before you unleashed attack dogs on my children? Before you sent mercenaries to intimidate my family? Before you monitored my home with illegal surveillance equipment? This community elected me to maintain standards," she declared. "Standards that your family repeatedly violated. Interesting. So the community voted for security cameras installed without permits? For using military-grade attack dogs on minors? For discriminatory enforcement targeting specific ethnic groups?" I turned to address the homeowners. "How many of you actually voted for these measures?" The room remained silent, fear evident on every face. "You have no idea who you're dealing with," Karen hissed, signaling to her guards who moved toward me. "I know exactly who I'm dealing with," I replied calmly. "Do you?" The doors opened, and 6 men in civilian clothes entered the room, positioning themselves strategically. My Delta Force team. Karen's brother recognized the threat immediately, barking orders to his guards. The room erupted in panic as Karen screamed for order. "Everyone sit down!" The command in my voice froze everyone instantly. "Karen Anderson, you are currently under federal investigation for multiple violations, including civil rights abuses, illegal surveillance, operation of an unlicensed security force, housing discrimination, and assault on minors." The color drained from Karen's face as I held up my phone showing active satellite imagery of the community center. "Right now, federal agents have surrounded this building. Your personal finances have been frozen pending investigation, your brother's accounts seized, and your security team's identities flagged in federal databases." Her brother lunged toward me, only to find himself instantly restrained by 2 of my team members who moved with terrifying efficiency. The guards at The walls hesitated, suddenly uncertain. "Your brother should know better than to attack a superior officer," I said calmly. "You're bluffing," Karen sputtered. "You have no authority here." I pulled out my military ID and a federal authorization. As of 1400 hours today, this entire HOA is under federal investigation for suspected connections to domestic terrorism, utilizing military tactics against American citizens, and operating an illegal paramilitary organization on U.S. soil. The projector activated, showing financial records, surveillance footage, and medical reports of injured homeowners, including my son. These documents show Karen Anderson has embezzled over $2.7 million from HOA funds, diverted payments to shell companies, and coordinated with local officials to selectively enforce regulations against minority homeowners. Gasps filled the room as neighbors saw the evidence of Karen's corruption laid bare. "That's not all," I continued, clicking to the next slide. "These satellite images show illegal weapons stored in Karen's basement, the same restricted military equipment her security team has been using to intimidate families." Federal agents entered the room as I turned to the community. "For 3 months you've lived under a reign of terror disguised as community standards. This ends today," Karen screamed as they approached with handcuffs. "You can't do this." "I know. People. I'll have your career destroyed." I stepped closer, my voice calm but carrying absolute authority. "You chose the wrong family to target, Karen. I've faced warlords, terrorists, and dictators, people far more dangerous than you. The difference is they knew who they were dealing with." In the aftermath, we discovered the full extent of Karen's corruption. Her network crumbled completely. Federal indictments against her, her brother, 4 corrupt local officials, and 16 members of their security team. The charges included civil rights violations, conspiracy, racketeering, assault on minors, illegal surveillance, and domestic terrorism. Our neighborhood transformed within days. Homes blossomed with personality again as families reclaimed their right to self-expression. Children played freely in yards without fear. The families forced out were contacted and offered their homes back at their original purchase prices, funded by Karen's seized assets. I stood on my porch watching Marcus teach the younger kids basketball on our new hoop. Amaya helped Mrs. Washington plant flowers that would have violated at least 7 of Karen's ridiculous regulations. Tara joined me. "You know you're their hero now," she said, nodding toward the neighbors gathering for our community's first ever cultural celebration cookout. Shook my head. I just did what anyone would do. Protected their family. Karen Anderson made the fatal mistake that many tyrants make. She believed her power made her untouchable, never considering that the family she targeted might have power of their own. That's the thing about picking fights. You should always know who you're really dealing with. If you enjoyed this HOA revenge story, please subscribe for more.